This podcast is brought to you by the good people at Living with Hemophilia, the online hemophilia community brought to you by Bayer. Living with Hemophilia is the destination of choice for a plethora of useful info, like medical and non-medical tips, helpful advice, information on programs for all ages and stages, leadership opportunities and initiatives, sewing patterns, and videos, the best videos. And because it's on the internet, it's easy to find. Simply type livingwithhemophilia.com into your search bar, and there you are. Thank you, Internet. Join Bayer's community of fellow hemophilia patients, caregivers, and advocates as we put the live in Living with Hemophilia. You can even like us on Facebook. That's even better because you can use emojis on our Facebook page and receive all our latest updates. So check out Living with Hemophilia. And before you wish happy birthday to that friend from 3rd grade or share a funny meme about cats and Mondays, head over to Facebook and like Bayer's Living with Hemophilia page. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome to episode 31 of Ask the Expert. We have a research theme to our conversation today, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to hear from our guests about the latest innovative research study that is being developed out of the National Hemophilia Foundation. I am your host, Amy Board, and today we get to talk about MyBDC, or My Bleeding Disorder Community. Maybe some of you have heard through the grapevine, or you've seen NHF speak at your recent chapter meeting about MyBDC, or maybe this is brand new to you. Regardless, I think this is something that everyone in the bleeding disorder community should pay attention to. And by everyone, this time I actually mean everyone. This is a study, this is a survey that is for not only patients, not only parents, but also siblings, spouses, caretakers, and even grandparents. This is truly something new. I wanted to push my guests, Michelle and Maria, today about why this is something that is different. I know our community, being a rare disease community, is heavily surveyed. At every chapter event, I know you have to do an evaluation. I know you have to do many surveys with clinical trials at the HTC, and I know most of you are probably experiencing survey fatigue. And so I wanted to really push them to tell us why this is different and why we should participate. And I really do believe that this is something that is going to be unique and special for years and decades to come in our community. The genesis of this project really surprised me, and the outcomes that they hope to accomplish, I believe, are extremely patient-driven. All in all, I think this will be something that you, as members of this community, can personally utilize. I don't think this is going to be information that is collected and thought leaders in our community, physicians or research specialists or pharmaceutical companies. I don't believe that the information that will be collected is just going to go out into the ether and serve and educate those people at a higher level than us in the community. I believe that there will be an aspect to that, but there will also be an aspect that will come directly back to you as the member, as the patient, as the spouse, as the caretaker, and as the sibling. There will be a personalized dashboard. After the initial survey, which takes about 20 to 30 minutes to fill out, there will be personalized sub-surveys based on your experiences, based on your issues and concerns. This is something that I believe is truly unique, and I can't wait for you guys to hear more about it. So please write down your questions. There's going to be some options for you to have those questions answered. There is an email that you can actually directly email Michelle and Maria, and I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys to hear about this. Before we jump in, I have to give a plug to our Bloodstream podcast this month. The September episode of Bloodstream is just packed with gems. And I have to single out the interview with Dr. High that Patrick has. It's towards the end of the podcast. So if you're kind of scrolling through and you can only listen for like 20 or 30 minutes, try to find that interview segment with Dr. High. Dr. High is the founder of Spark Therapeutics, and she's a gene therapy wizard, and that conversation is really great. So I have to plug that. And also, I hope to see you guys at the Bleeding Disorder Conference in Anaheim this year. It's coming up The first week of October, I have to plug some of our Believe Limited stuff because we're going to be everywhere at this thing, of course. Please stop by the Teen Impact Awards on Thursday night after the opening session, the opening ceremony. We're going to be celebrating our teenagers that have made an impact in their community this year. And even if you don't have a teen that you're personally connected to that's being awarded, feel free to stop by. It's going to be a great show. It's always a great show. We have some special guests. You're going to see Josh Gordy. You're going to see this dude who climbed Everest, Chris Bombardier. Patrick Lynch will be there. Maybe some other special guests. It's going to be great. So please join us Thursday night at the Teen Impact Awards. And then new project that's happening on Friday of the BDC, it's going to be in the exhibit hall, is the science fair. And I'm sure you guys have heard about this. The science fair is, man, this thing is going to be bananas. It's going to be a live action, fully functional science fair that goes through the science of bleeding disorders. You will actually see a live knee with a clean interior of a knee, what happens when a bleed occurs, and then what that damage looks like. There's going to be a gene therapy, a future treatment module for you guys to check out. Really cool for everybody. It's not just for kids. It's really, truly going to be an experience that you can't miss. So come find us in the exhibit hall on Friday. That's October 4th, and we'll be there from 11:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. So come find us. And then Friday night, we're doing a new storytelling hour. We're working with the Moth to do a storytelling hour specifically for the bleeding disorder community, and that's going to be a lovely, intimate time. So we would love to have you guys out on Friday night. So come find us at the BDC. Come find me at the BDC. Of course, I'd always love your questions and your thoughts for future podcasts. I would love to know what topics you're into. Find me at Twitter at Bordeaux87, and you can always email me at mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com. Want to give a special thanks to Bayer Pharmaceuticals, as always, for sponsoring Ask the Expert. Without their support, conversations like the one I'm having today would not happen, so we're so grateful. So thank you to Bayer Pharmaceuticals, and make sure to check them out at the BDC as well. So let's jump in, man. Let's jump in. My guests today are from the research department at the National Hemophilia Foundation. Michelle Witkop is the head of research, and Maria Santaella is the research nurse specialist. Both of them are relatively new to NHF within the last 3-4 years, and they are the brilliant minds behind MyBDC, or My Bleeding Disorder Community. Michelle actually has a research background primarily in pain management, but she has experience with the bleeding disorder community as well. And she's just one of those people who is making a visible, significant impact in our community already. And so I'm really excited that you get to hear her voice. Maria actually was an HTC nurse for years in Miami. She actually worked in HIV prior to that. I have known Maria forever in this community. She's just been one of those very visible, very trusted HTC nurses, as we all love our beloved HTC nurses. She's one of those. And the fact that she is a part of the research team on a national level is very exciting to me. She is very patient-focused. She's very patient-driven. And her contributions are going to be significant. So I'm so excited you guys get to hear from them. So let's grab ourselves a cup of coffee, both of us, and have ourselves a conversation. I am your host, Amy Board, and welcome to episode 31, or our in-depth look at MyBDC episode of the Ask the Expert podcast. Michelle and Maria, thank you so much for joining us today on Ask the Expert. Personally, I am very excited to have the two of you. Before we get into it, the meat of our interview, if you will, I'd love to get your individual backgrounds. You guys both come from such unique backgrounds, and I'd love to share with our listeners the new direction NHF is taking with their research department. I know the department has grown so much in the past few years, and so I just wanted to ask, what's the vision for the expanded research team at NHF?
Well, Amy, thank you. Thank you for having us and for having us be able to explain all of this wonderful information and where we're going. Personally, this is Michelle, and my background is that I have been a nurse practitioner, lead clinician at a treatment center in northern Michigan for going on 19 years prior to leaving in 2017 and joining the National Hemophilia Foundation as the head of research. So I was actually recruited into bleeding disorders because of my pain background. And I have done a lot of research myself in pain in the hemophilia community. I was the principal investigator for the National Pain Study, as well as the Impact Quality of Life pain series. And along with Angela Lambing, has done a lot of research in pain. So I have a research background. I'm interested in pain mostly in the hemophilia community, and that is why I think NHF reached out to me. And as for the direction that NHF is taking with research, we're pretty excited. NHF has had a research department for years. Mainly it has been geared towards funding and supporting external research. And we continue to do that. We're very excited. We have multiple awards that we offer to researchers of the multidisciplinary team. We go from bench research, which is research in the lab, all the way to multidisciplinary awards. We support nursing, physical therapy, social work. We have a multidisciplinary team award called the Innovative Investigator Award. And then we also have a bridge grant that is for physician investigators, physician scientists, as they are trying to get funding from the National Institute of Health or from the federal government for these really big awards that are $500,000, $1 million, and they need more data. And so the Bridge Award offers them $125,000 for a year to gather more data to support that NIH grant. So the National Hemophilia Foundation supports all levels of research, and we're excited to continue to do that. We also have, over the past year, done some own internal research through the My Life, Our Future. We worked on their pilot group for women to do a telegenetics to see if telegenetics was an option for women who have had genetic testing or genotyping, but haven't had the option for genetic counseling. We have surveyed the provider community about pain, and we're working with Dr. Tyler Buckner, who is the chair of the MASAC Pain Initiative Committee, to develop recommendations that we're going to send to MASAC for how the medical community can respond to the CDC guidelines. And then we also have surveyed the camp community for the first time ever survey that's done looking at our national camps. And we're going to be having a publication coming out on that. So we're not doing a lot more in the future, but in the last 2 years, we have done some NHF-initiated research. And then going forward, that final prong of our three-prong approach would be MyBDC, My Bleeding Disorder Community, which is a community-powered registry. And again, we're really excited about that, and that is what I think we're going to discuss further as we move forward in this conversation.
Michelle, before we get to Maria, I swear we're not going to put you in a corner. I want to, I'd love to know, this is just fascinating hearing some of the research initiatives that are coming out of NHF. I would love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about how this compares to other chronic disease communities. I know that other large chronic disease nonprofits, the MS Society, Komen with breast cancer, raise so much money specifically for research. And what is the difference between what those organizations do and what's specifically coming out of NHF in terms of research?
I couldn't say exactly. I know that they raise a lot of money and they support researchers, external researchers such as we do. I don't know what else. They also will have resources available for people who have the disorder that they are, interested in, breast cancer or something like that. They support education, which again we do. So I'm not quite sure. I'd have to really go and look. I have not looked at like the Komen Foundation and things like that to really do a comparison as to the extent of what they do with their dollars compared to what we're doing.
Well, this is a great excuse to have you back on the podcast. Maybe we can do like a comparison. No, I was just I was interested because I do believe that NHF has such, being a part of the national organization myself for so long as the executive director of the Colorado chapter, the precision that you guys take in creating, global ends and global goals when it comes to research is so impressive to me. And I wonder how it compares, across the board with these chronic disease organizations. So it's just something to keep in the back of my mind as we continue with our content here.
When we look at the research that we have supported, the Judith Poole Award, it's been in existence since the early 70s, and the amount of information and research and support that it has gotten and given to further research. So when you look at those early awards, they have looked at the classification of the factor VIII gene. There's been a lot that has been the early foundation for gene therapy, von Willebrand's disease, the early foundation for understanding von Willebrand's disease. All of those types of things have come out of the Judith Poole Award. And people have taken that information and used it as a foundation for further research. And so a lot of the research that we have funded throughout the years has really been the foundation of the understanding of the bleeding disorders, the inherited bleeding disorders that we have today.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that some of those things have been specifically taken out of that award and the research that has funded. That's incredible.
It is.
So Maria, OMG, we're gonna get to you. Will you please let us know your background and how you got involved in NHF? You've been a member of this community for a while. We would love to hear a little bit from you.
Hi, thank you, Amy. I'm also delighted to be on your podcast. And, as you heard from Michelle, NHF is really very involved in research in our community. And to tell you the truth, prior to joining NHF, I was really not aware of all the wonderful things that it does. So it just makes my job a lot more exciting and a little bit more wanted to wake up every morning to be a part of that. So as far as my background goes, I've been a nurse for over 24 years. Prior to joining the bleeding disorders community, I worked in HIV, general pediatrics. But really for the last 16 years, I've been working in this community, which has been incredible to me. I started as a hemophilia nurse coordinator for the University of Miami. I did both pediatrics and adults there. And, as with everybody, I had no idea what I was doing at the beginning. I really didn't know much about bleeding disorders. It's a rare disorder community. So, but very soon I found my bearings and I fell in love with the community. I learned as much as I could, as fast as I could. I focused on taking care of my patients. And then I had the chance to travel and educate families all over the world, which really has always been one of my passions. In the process, while I was working in the HTC, I worked in all kinds of research projects, and I even conducted my own, which was how I recognized the importance of research and the positive impact that it can have in our community. So almost 2 years ago, in November will be 2 years, I joined the NHF Research Department. I had worked with Michelle in a couple of projects, and I was excited with the opportunity. And like I said earlier, really I had not a lot of ideas what I was getting myself into. I had some, of course, But we are what we've done, what we've accomplished, as you heard in the past 2 years, has been great. I'm pretty sure not many people know about it, so I thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell everyone what we do. And hopefully when they start hearing about MyBDC and how we are interested in adding the patient's perspective, the consumer's perspective in everything that we're doing, to putting them in the center of what the research department is doing, hopefully our consumers will be as excited as we are.
So to take us through the story of how MyBDC really evolved and where it came from, tell us a little bit, both of you, about what those first 6 months at NHF was like. You know, what did you come into? What did you learn about the community from sitting in that national chair? What were the gaps we needed to fill? What was it like as you started to pull together kind of the idea of where this would go forward with MyBDC?
Well, MyBDC, actually, when I started, MASAC, the Medical Advisory and Scientific Committee, was having a conversation about how they could add the patient's voice into research. And when I started, I brought the concept of how MyBDC could do that, because my experience has been with the Nurses' Health Study. I have been a participant of that for 30 plus years, and I really thought that this would be something that we could replicate in a way in the bleeding disorders community. The Nurses' Health Study started in, I think it was 1976, actually, and it started as a single survey to nurses because they felt that nurses would be interested. They had the knowledge base and of research, and that they would respond. And what they wanted to do is to understand how women were affected by oral contraceptives, because they were really just starting to get on the scene at that time. And they sent out the survey, and they got an amazing response rate of like 80 to 90%. And so they next year did the same thing, and again got a huge response rate. And they turned it into one of the biggest public health studies on women that were around. And to this day, they have over 280,000 nurses who have participated. It's been going on for 40 plus years, and it covers an amazing array of questions and topics that affect women as well as men, their children, nurses, physicians. It's just amazing. But I looked at that and I thought, you know, if we had that information from 40 years ago in our population, our community, that would have been incredible. But we don't, and we need to start somewhere. And MASAC was saying we really want the patient's voice. So how can we do something similar? And so we reached out to Harvard, who sponsors that, and talked to them about how they had it set up, and then talked internally about how we could set up something similar. It took us 2 years, but through this work, through interviewing and finding a platform vendor who would meet our specifications, and talking to the NIH about registries that they had, you know, what they liked about them, what they didn't like about them, we developed MyBDC, or My Bleeding Disorder Community. So that is the genesis of how we came to where we are today, and we're pretty excited about it. As for that first 6 months, I don't, you know, it's hard to, there's so much has happened. I think in this time frame, in doing these projects, all of these projects, one of the things that I have learned, that I've noted and learned, is that we've always seen that as providers, we speak a different language. And I really felt that I communicated well with the people that I worked with, the patients that I had. And being now in a patient advocacy group, I realized that there really is a communication gap. And trying to get your message across to people is difficult. And when I think I am saying one thing, it is often being interpreted differently. And it's that I'm speaking sometimes at a different level than somebody is interpreting it at. And it's trying to understand that and recognize that and manage that has been difficult. As an example, we've worked really hard to try and be very inclusive with MyBDC. And one of the things we realized by happening to speak with some women who were registering or enrolling, as they were enrolling, is that even though they were carriers, and they would say they are carriers, they have had 2 children who had hemophilia. They didn't identify themselves in the survey as being a carrier because they never had a formal diagnosis. And I would never have thought that that would be a barrier. They put themselves as not affected. And it just astounded me that they wouldn't consider themselves, because they did not have a formal diagnosis. They wouldn't put it down in the survey as being affected or being a carrier. So I think that type of thing, it makes me realize that we still have that communication gap, and that, when you work as a provider, you just don't really understand what it's like to live with a bleeding disorder. And that's, again, why we need to have the patient's voice, the consumer's voice, the community member's voice in the mix. They need to be able to say what they need to say directly to us.
So how is MyBDC different from so many of the surveys that have been administered with this community? What are some of the things that you guys want to measure? What is going to be done with the data, hopefully? How is this different from a patient's view? Why should they participate?
Boy, that's a lot. Maria, do you want to take it?
Sorry, I went rogue.
Go ahead, Michelle. You're doing a great job.
So how is it different is that this is, we have worked, first off, I want to say that we have worked with ATHN, the American Thrombosis and Hemostasis Network, and the CDC to make sure that we are covering areas that have not been covered in other places, that we are aligned with them, and we're getting data or information that is complementary and not competing. So we want people to understand that we are not trying to take the place of any of these registries that are out there, Community Counts or ATHN registry. We are trying to get information that they are not gathering, and that are going to make them richer and more robust. So that's really important for us to get that message out right away. Ours is longitudinal, meaning that we are going out through the years, and the information that we're gathering, again, is not being gathered anywhere else. We're getting information about mental health, depression, anxiety, pain, women's issues that isn't being gathered anywhere else. Joint bleeds. Believe it or not, unless your log is connected to like ATHN, there's really no way for us to collect information about joint bleeds. It's embedded in your comp visit information, but there's really nothing that you can go and get a report on how many joint bleeds somebody has had. And that's something that we'll have in MyBDC. And not just for somebody who is male and has hemophilia, it will be for any bleeding disorder, any gender. And again, we have a lot of women who, whether they are a carrier, whether they have mild hemophilia themselves or hemophilia themselves, they're like invisible, and they feel they've been having joint bleeds, but nobody's listening to them. Von Willebrand's disease, the same thing. So this will give us an opportunity to hear from them whether or not they're experiencing these issues, and we'll be able to report that, and then a researcher who maybe is using the Athens database will be able to use our database also, and that will just make their research that much more inclusive. So we're excited about that possibility. The other thing is that we're going to, as our participants fill out their information in their surveys, they are going to be able to develop their personalized dashboard. And through this dashboard, they're going to be able to benchmark themselves against everybody else who's in MyBDC. It's in a de-identified and aggregate manner, meaning that there's no personal information. All of that is stripped from it, so you can't identify an individual person. You can't go, oh, hey, that's my mom's stuff right there, or that I know that person up in northern Michigan. That you won't get that level of information, but you'll be able to look at the issues that are important to you as a participant, and you'll be able to compare and see what are other people saying about those same issues. And then we are having other things that are built into the dashboard that will be a benefit to the participants, something we're calling care links, where they can send out information of their choosing. They can put time frames around it, and this can include education. It can include information about their medication, so they can send it out to their school, their daycare operator, latchkey. If they have a new provider, a new dentist, and they want to make sure that they understand what their disorder is, then they can send out specific education to them. And this is all going to be embedded in their personalized dashboard. So we've really worked hard to make this dashboard a resource to them that's going to be a benefit.
Yeah, no, that's very important, and it's basically at the heart of why this is different. Is that we're not really taking the information and having and leaving the participants at a loss as to how this contributed, how the information have contributed. So obviously we have research goals in mind, but what makes it different is that we're actually giving the information back to those participants, like in those ways that Michelle just explained. So through the dashboard, they'll be able to look at their information. They'll be able to compare their information over time. They'll be able to compare their information with that of others, have access to resources, educational findings that we find as a result of the research projects, as a research of the information gathered. And also important to note is that all the information that is gathered, it's always going to be done anonymously. So that means that all identifiers are removed from the data. The data is always going to be reported in an aggregate manner, which means that it's grouped. So all participants' information is grouped so that nobody can identify, like Michelle said, who's providing what kind of information. So trying to be very mindful about that. Another key difference is that we're including the family members, the immediate family members. We know from studies that children with cancer, siblings of children that undergo cancer treatment are affected. They seem to suffer from more chronic pain as adults just because they lived with their brother or their sister while they were undergoing chemo or any other treatment. So we know that the family members are also somehow affected by this, and we want to look into that and see what exactly MyBDC can capture through that. And then, Michelle said that it was longitudinal. So longitudinal means that it's going to be up for, we think NHF has committed for 5 years, but we really think this is going to be something more long-term, because collecting information on a year-to-year basis long-term will actually help us identify changes and trends over time. And with the idea, and I was telling you about research goals earlier, is the ultimate goal is to improve quality of life, but also to come with research questions that are important to the community. We want them to be the collective voice that guides the research questions, the areas that we should look into a little bit more. And like Michelle said, directly from the patients, focusing and centering everything that we do on that patient experience, that consumer experience, and their family members.
I think having the personalized dashboard from my chair right here really is the difference between so many other studies. Not only is this information going to be used to improve the quality of life and move the community forward, but to have that personalized component that feels so different. And I imagine it's going to feel different from the family's chair, where they can really interact with what's going on. How long does the survey take? Is it an online thing? Is it going to take a long time? Does each family member participate? How are you guys collecting all of this?
So it is interesting. We have an enrollment survey, and that's when you first sign up, and that just gathers basic demographic information, your email, things like that. Once we verify your email, then we send you the baseline survey. The baseline survey will be the longest. And now, one thing I need to just stress is that we have put this through the Internal Review Board, IRB, and they determined that it is not research. It is data collection. And so as such, we did not need to do an informed consent. But we really wanted to be transparent and share with everybody our privacy policy, what we're doing with the data, and explain, just like in an informed consent, everything about what this is. So before you do the baseline, there is what we call a patient agreement, and it explains all of those elements of an informed consent, but at a level that is very readable. And you would have that option to read that, download it, and it will always be in your personalized dashboard. Then you'll get the baseline survey. This is a lot of one-time information. It gives us an understanding of who you are, and a lot of it is based on logic and branching. So even if you have two people who have very similar experiences, based on how they answer each question, it'll take them into different types of surveys. So everybody is going to have a very unique survey. And what we found through our beta testers and through people who have done it, it takes, and your comfort level with using a computer, it takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes probably. What we found is that women with a bleeding disorder, it takes longer because we have a lot of women's health history questions there. But that's our longest survey. We recognize that, and we try to tell people up front, hang in there with us. This is the most information that we're gathering. The next survey would be what we call our core survey, and this will be sent on an annual basis. And this will be pretty much standardized questions from validated tools. Many people might be familiar with these from other surveys that they've seen, like it's called an EQ5D or the HemoQual, those types of surveys. And it'll be the same survey year after year. And what we're looking for there are changes, patterns, and trends. Because if you take those same questions every year, then you are going to be able to see how you are changing throughout the years. And based on your core survey and your baseline survey, we're going to be able to identify sub-surveys that are focused on the individual person and what their interests are. So it might be mental health, it might be pain, it might be women's issues, or physical activity, things like that. And so we would send out specific surveys that are of interest to an individual, only to that person. So not everybody is going to get all of these surveys. They will be based on your responses that you included, and we'll be sending those out. Medical marijuana is a big interest right now. And so we have a few screening questions on medical marijuana, trying to find out how it's being used in our population. And in a year, we're going to be able to go back and say, this is how people are using medical marijuana in our community. And for those people who are using it, we'll be able to go back with a sub-survey and ask for more in-depth information. And so we will probably be one of those first populations of a chronic disease who will have specific information on how people are using medical marijuana within their community. So we're pretty excited about that. And then the last type of survey that we'll have is what we're calling hot topics, or a question of the day. And that is something that is happening out in the population, you know, the general public. And we will send that out, and it'll just come up and it'll pop up, and it'll be just a real brief 1 to 5 questions. And everybody always has the option of whether they want to take any of these surveys or not. And one that's going to be going out in the next, well, maybe even today, but this week, is on vaping, because we've been all hearing about vaping and how it's, causing so many problems in this young population. So we wondered, how is this affecting our community? And so we're going to send out a question, and the first one would be, have you in the last year used e-cigarettes or vaped? And if they say yes, then it takes them to 4 more questions that they can answer. And we can get this, and it's a rapid cycle research, that we can get this information real quickly and understand how a topic that's affecting our community, that's affecting the general public, how is it affecting our community specifically? And then we can respond very quickly, whether it's to legislators, to payers, to put out education ourselves. However we need to respond, we can do that. So that's basically our surveys that we have set up.
And the other thing that I want to add about that last survey that she was talking about is that we can actually send educational material. So we'll send materials, we'll send educational materials that are actually vetted, that are actually come from legitimate sources, that are accurate, so that in addition to trying to find out how something like this might be affecting our community, we're also educating them and hoping, that if they haven't seen this type of news lately, or they're not aware of a specific topic, that they're actually getting it from somewhere, and MyBDC is the perfect conduit for that.
You guys, this sounds so well thought out and so patient-centered. I love it. What about security? What about the data? Where are you guys housing it? What happens to the data after you collect it? How have you guys gone about that angle?
Right. So we mentioned briefly that the information gathered will be de-identified and aggregated. And what that basically means is that once you input your information, a participant inputs information in MyBDC, all that gets separated, and anything that identifies that individual gets stripped and gets replaced by a number. Okay, this is very this is something that is done very frequently. And we also talked about how we're going to, whenever we report this information, we're going to group it. So it'll never say, Maria said X. It'll say, 25% of the 1,000 people that participate in MyBDC have vaped in the last year, for example. So that's how the way this information will be reported. But also because we take confidentiality and safety very, very serious, the safety of the information gathered so seriously, we hired experts. We knew that NHF could not do it alone. So we hired Arbometrics, which are experts in data analysis and medical information, gathering of medical information. And they use standard security measures that encrypt sensitive personal information, both in storage, so while it's being stored, and also where it's being transmitted. They also utilize logical databases that segment the data. So what means is that not all the data is stored in one place. So some of it is stored in one place, some of it is stored in the other and somewhere else. So the idea with this is that by segmenting the data, you're further protecting it from any risk. So we're actually very happy with this decision. Arborimetrics have been a great partner since day one, and they're actually the ones who are helping us develop the platform too. So this platform is being developed by them with the help of NHF, and it's unique to the bleeding disorder. So we're not tagging along something else that somebody has done. This is being built specifically for us. And with our vision in hand. So they're actually as excited as we are because, like you mentioned, Amy, this is a very unique way of doing things, of integrating it and allowing patients to be part of this process.
And I do need to mention that Arborimetrics, as we interviewed, and we interviewed extensively, we put out requests for proposals, and we interviewed, groups that had done other types of registries for the government and everyone else, and Arborimetrics really rose to the top because of their security, because of their just their dynamic platform. They're very flexible, which was important to us. That we are able to add in things as we need to, and they're not dinosaurs, which, we don't have to wait a year in order to get something changed. But they have history with the medical community, so they know what it's like to work with the medical community. Their data security is medical and bank grade. So it's the highest security that is available out there, and that was important to us. We recognized that we needed to partner with somebody who had those kind of standards similar to ours, and they met that. So as Maria said, we have been in this partnership, and we're so happy with them and the work that we've been doing together. It's been exciting.
Yeah, and we've always gotten patient input, consumer input as to what they would like to see, how they would, what would be something that they would want to be, that they would participate on, and the fact that they're so flexible, that they're actually building this platform for us, means that this can evolve as we evolve. So if we can actually make improvements, and we can make changes based on input from the patients. So that's something that we always welcome to, from the participants, from the consumer, anybody that is part of MyBDC. We want to hear from that, because the idea is to make something that we all can, a tool that we can all benefit from, that the community as a whole can benefit from.
And that's something we haven't talked about, Amy, is that we spent a year going around the country talking to focus groups, to consumers, to the public, and to providers, to AFN, to CDC, getting their input into what they felt would be important to include in this. So this wasn't just NHF building this. We really got input from as many people as we could, as many groups of people as we could envision. And we really tried to be as transparent as possible. And it was interesting because so many of these aspects of the personalized dashboard came from these focus groups. It came from, mom saying, I want a place that I can upload pictures of the bruises that my son has. Or I want a place that I can send information to, I think I remember specifically, I want a place that I can send information to my dentist, because I can't tell you how many times I went to a dentist and they always had the wrong diagnosis when I got to a new dentist. And so it was like, well, we talked to Arborimetrics, and they go, yeah, we can do that. And that's how our personalized dashboard came to be, from these suggestions from consumers in these meetings, our community. So what this looks like today, I think in a year or two, it's going to look very different, because we just keep taking from the meetings that we have with the community at chapter meetings and things like that, and we ask them, what would you like to see in this? And they tell us, and we add to it. So we keep adding things to it, and Arborimetrics just keep saying, yeah, we can do that. And it just adds to that personalized dashboard, and it'll just be that much more better in another year or two. And that's the community's voice in there. That's them saying this is what we want, and we add it to it.
I think that's such an important distinction that you brought up, that a lot of these ideas came out of those stakeholder focus groups. That's impressive to me. And I also love, and just kind of hearing the evolution of this, I just think it's very special. Just as a statement, I think it's very special that this was, started by the idea from our medical board, from our national medical board, MASAC, that they wanted the patient's voice in research, and this is how it evolved. And I just think that's very special. From my time working in public health in Colorado, policy in Colorado, everyone said they wanted the patient voice, but no one had any clear idea of how to move forward with it. And everyone agreed that it was important, but it was just very difficult to figure out how that was done. And so kudos to you guys for continuing to work. I'm sure it was, there were a lot of different avenues you guys could go down, but I'm just so impressed with this, just personally from my chair. I'd love to ask the awesome question of who's funding this thing. This seems like a huge initiative. How are you guys being funded for it?
So that's an important question, and that's something that the community wants to know. Right now, NHF is funding this. They're funding it 100%. And they have committed to 5 years for this. We do anticipate that we will be seeking grants. We will develop a revenue stream for how we'll be able to use this data in the future. We did get some grants in the very beginning to develop a strategic plan, as well as how to embed the education into MyBDC. But whenever we seek grants, or we have gotten them in the past, these grantees will never have access to personalized information. They'll never have access to individual data. That just won't be an option for us as we move forward. Our vision is that in the future, once we begin developing a database, that we'll be able to open this up to external researchers. And that might be payers, it might be our industry colleagues. There are others who want to understand this information. We don't want to keep it sequestered or siloed. So if it is a federally funded hemophilia treatment center or a provider, Athens CDC, that will always be free to them. We will share this information freely to our colleagues. If it is a profit company or something like that, there will be a fee structure, and that will be used to support MyBDC to continue it beyond the 5 years. Our vision is that we're going to be able to continue this for years and years to come. That would be the beauty of this. That's how we envision funding this.
So how do folks sign up? How do they get involved? Do they have to go through their chapter network? Do they have to go through their HTC network? Is there a direct link you'd like to send people to? How do you guys envision this?
That's such an important point. We didn't want to add on any burden to treatment centers or to chapters. We really want this to be a straightforward right to the participant. So you can always go to mybdc.hemophilia.org. It is .org, right?
Yes.
All of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh. So mybdc.hemophilia.org. And that will take you to our website where there is an enroll button, and you can enroll and get that first. It takes 2 to 3 minutes in order to enroll. But this is direct. We are going to chapters. We have a WebEx with the treatment centers. We'll be talking with them even more. We hope that they will encourage people to participate, because this will benefit all of them eventually. But it is not dependent upon them. I hope that that distinction is clear. We want to go through them. We want to work with them, but we don't want to add any burden to them, thinking that they need to recruit, they need to do anything extra to add to their day in order to have people sign up to MyBDC. We don't want to add any burden to treatment centers or to chapters. And so that's why people can go direct. And you can also go to the hemophilia, the NHF website, hemophilia.org, and just put MyBDC into the search engine, and it'll bring up our part of the website there. And you can enroll right on our website.
The other thing that we're doing is we'll travel. We'll go anywhere. We've been going to chapter meetings. We've been going to educational meetings, anything sponsored by NHF, some of the chapters. We'll go anywhere to do a formal presentations. We have demonstrations, sites in which they can look at what the idea of the dashboard, what that's going to look like. So if anybody's interested, you can reach out to us, and we'll be happy to set up a time to go and do a formal presentation.
Maria, that's where I was going. I just wanted to see if folks had questions, before they enrolled. Will they be able to get the information off that website? Should they contact you guys directly? Where do they go if they have some personal questions for you guys before they get involved?
Yeah, so like Michelle said, in our website, all the information, a lot of information. We're actually in the process of rewriting everything because we did that initially when we were just starting in March. By the way, this is when we started enrolling patients. So we're in the process of rewriting that. But my email's there, my phone number's there as well. I'll be happy to answer questions, talk to anybody that has even more questions. And again, anybody can request us to come and present formally. So all of this out, we're very open. We're very excited about this. Hopefully you can tell because we think this is going to be fantastic for our community. So we are very open to talking to anybody who's interested.
Listeners, did you hear that? Maria says you can call her. That's terrific.
Both of our numbers are on our on the website, and so we're available. And we have had some people who have gotten stuck and have called us, and we're open to that.
So Michelle and Maria, who are you targeting for this study? Who can apply? Is it just people with hemophilia who are affected? Is it for family members? Who is invited to apply and to enroll in MyBDC?
Well, actually, it's for anyone who has who is born with a bleeding disorder, and it can be any bleeding disorder, not just hemophilia or von Willebrand's. Any factor deficiency, any platelet deficiency, all of those that somebody has been born with, we want to be able to capture that information. So everybody is welcome, the ultra rares, all of those, as well as their family members, the unaffected people, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, grandparents. Those are groups that we've never studied before, and information that we only are gathering from other disorders. We look at the cancer fields, the arthritis fields, for a lot of our information that we get on siblings or grandparents. We don't have a lot from our own population. So this will give us the opportunity to really study that family unit, because we know that living with any factor deficiency or any bleeding disorder affects the whole family, not just the person who has it, but the whole family. And so we need to really understand the experiences that the whole family is living with. And that's why we would like them all to enroll and participate.
So Maria, if our community members that are listening are going to the Bleeding Disorder Conference here coming up in Anaheim, is there any information about BDC that will be at the conference? Is there a way for people that are not going to the conference to listen in to get some more information from you guys specifically on MyBDC? What's happening at the conference in Anaheim?
Well, a lot is happening in the conference in Anaheim. We're actually launching the dashboard there. So we've been enrolling since March, but the official launch of the dashboard will be there. It's when we're going to be demonstrating not a prototype, but something more similar to what we had envisioned. So we'll be part of the NHF booth, in which we will be able to enroll patients, do a demonstration for patients. We are going to have a video posted in Facebook at some point. And then we're also doing a plenary on Saturday the 5th regarding MyBDC at the Anaheim from 9:15 to 10:15 Pacific time, which is 12:15 Eastern time.
And I heard a little rumor that there's going to be a Facebook Live session about it. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, we're going to have a Facebook Live session on Thursday, which is going to be at 1:30 Pacific time and 10:30 Eastern time.
So if you're not attending the conference, that would be a great way for you guys to hear and listen. And I just, if you're not savvy with social media, which I kind of am not, I'm learning this stuff as well. You don't have to, it will be lovely if you're there at the time. You can actually ask questions during that Facebook Live session. But you can also catch it if you're not available at that time. You can go back and look at that recording. So that's a great way to get information.
Amy, I'd like to clarify the time of the
Yes.
Facebook. It's 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern.
Well, I can't thank you enough, the both of you, for taking the time to speak with all of us today. This is so important and so exciting. I'm so excited to see, as we go throughout the years, what this project in particular, what benefits start to trickle down. I'm very excited. Listeners, again, just to reiterate, if you guys are interested, please go to mybdc.hemophilia.org for more information. Also, you can enroll. It will take about 2 to 3 minutes to enroll. That initial survey will take about 20 to 30 minutes, and then you will be sent sub-surveys personalized to your current experiences, which is terrific. If you have questions, please go to mybdc.hemophilia.org, and if you have further questions that are not answered from that website, you can email Michelle and Maria at research@hemophilia.org. All of these links and email addresses will be in our program notes, so make sure to check those out. And we are so excited to see the future of what you guys will bring to our community from NHF in terms of research. Thank you again, Michelle and Maria, and we will hopefully have you back on the podcast soon.
Oh,
Thank you so
much for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you again. And we will see you guys next month for another episode of Ask the Expert.
Have you checked out Living with Hemophilia yet? If you have, kudos to you. Not only are you eager to join the exciting community of discourse and helpful information, you're also a keen listener and patron of the arts. But if you haven't taken a swim through livingwithhemophilia.com, take a moment to pull it up on the ol' internet. I think you'll love it. Helpful content, relevant updates, and, most of all, a bunch of people going through the same things you are. It's a growing part of the online Living with Hemophilia community, brought together by the good people at Bayer. Also, put it on your Facebook to-do list. Hit the like button on the Living with Hemophilia Facebook page. It's a good alternative to looking at the slideshow of your neighbor's recent foot surgery. I mean, unless you're into that sort of thing. Living with Hemophilia from Bayer. Check it out.
Bloodstreammedia.com is your one-stop shop for all of Bloodstream Media's podcasts for the bleeding disorder community.
Once on bloodstreammedia.com, don't forget to follow the links to subscribe to the Bloodstream podcast, Ask the Expert podcast, the Powering Through podcast, and the Bloodline podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have an idea for a future episode of Ask the Expert? Have a question that you would like to hear an expert answer?
Email us at mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com. You'll also find Bloodstream Media on facebook.com/bloodstreammedia and on Twitter @bloodstreaminfo.
This episode of Ask the Expert was written by Amy Board.
Produced by Patrick James Lynch, Rob Bradford,
Joshua Sterling Bragg,
Avra Friedman,
And Colby Crow.
Artwork by Katie Wright-Mead
and Ryan Gielan.
And the Ask the Expert podcast is edited by Allison Stoney.
I'm your host, Amy Board, and until next time, embrace that mystery and fear of life. You are not alone.